What's up, everybody? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy, and this is my podcast, Vox&Hops, where I hang out with fellow musicians and industry folk, and we talk about their lives, their music, their projects, and most importantly, craft beer. Heavy Montreal weekend is upon us, and as I mentioned last week, I am going to be at Heavy Montreal for the first time as a media. I've played it twice before, but this time around I'm going to be on the other side of the mic, and I'm going to be interviewing, hopefully, a whole bunch of artists. I have some interviews which have been confirmed, and I have others that are still up in the air, so I'm not going to announce anything because, as with all things, I do not like to count my chicks before they hatch. So I'm going to keep my cards close to my chest, and I'm going to be happy with what I got and super appreciative of what I end up with at the end. I'm just stoked to be there, to be a part of it, that the podcast has grown to this level in such a short period of time, and that's thanks to all of you listeners who are making Vox&Hops what it is. Today I have a special episode, something that a lot of people worked on behind the scenes to make happen, and I'm very proud that this happened. I have to give a huge shout out to the following people for making this podcast episode a reality. Number one and foremost is a Vox&Hops alumni, Mr. JF Michaud. Huge thank you to you. I also have to give a big shout out to Lisa Lee and Daniel Lima for helping make this podcast run as smoothly as it did, and to my Vox&Hops' producer, acting behind the scenes, Mrs. Jessica Buckingham. I also have to give a huge shout out to longtime friend, also another Vox&Hops alumni, Mr. Chirs Kells, who was there getting some video footage of this interview. Huge thanks to Molson for hooking us up with all the beers for this show. Really appreciated it. This podcast would not have happened without all of you people pushing it and organizing it seriously while I was in Asia and on the other side of the world and in a different total mindset and time frame. So a huge thank you, and so I really appreciate all of your hard work for making this episode become what it is. Today on the podcast, I'm with Nick Farkas, who is one of the most important and influential promoters from Montreal. I am very honored to present this episode number 43, Vox&Hops, with Nick Farkas from Heavy Montreal.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
What's up, everybody? Today I'm with Nick Farkas from Eventco, the man behind Heavy MTL.
The man behind the team behind Heavy MTL.
Very specific. I like it.
Well, there's a lot of people that work on the festival. I do not want to take credit for it.
I appreciate you taking time because Heavy Montreal is next week.
It is correct.
The grind is here.
Grind has begun.
Tell everyone a little bit about yourself. Who are you? How did you get into this crazy game of promoting concerts?
I am a concert promoter living in Montreal, obviously, and I got into this business basically promoting, punk rock shows and metal shows in the late 80s. That tells you how long I've been doing this. Well, I didn't do it the entire time, but basically, my buddy was like, we wanted all these bands that we wanted to see weren't coming to Montreal. So he started randomly basically calling up managers and agents and finding the bands. It was before the internet, so there was no way to look them up. So it was much more a DIY approach to things, and then convincing them to come and play. And, we did it for fun. I was in college. I was going, I was a bike messenger. And it was just like something that we were doing. It was like, we love punk rock and we love metal and we were into it. So we just did that for fun. Never, ever. I cannot stress how never, ever I thought I would make a living doing it. But it's been amazing. Great. If you love music and you like working hard, it's a great life.
That's insane. I can't imagine the hustle that I had to take to go out and contact these managers. No internet, no, just connections with people. Hunting the hustle. How to talk about that? Let's see.
I mean, in the beginning, when we really started, that was it. And some of the bands had agents, and some were easier to track down. But at first, it was really like he was just like Glenn was just calling them up and being like, trying to find a band through the label, or we got a 7-inch or 12-inch, or somebody got him records somehow, and then it was like there was a contact on the back, and figuring it out, and then. It was literally hustle and finding out what worked too at the time, like booking metal bands and booking punk rock bands. We had some great guys at Cargo Records back in the day who would like, oh my God, you got to get on this, new Deicide Records blowing up, and like we're like, oh really? And then we contact them and they come in and sell out wherever we were doing it at the time. So we had, like, back in the day, like, your contacts were, I'd call for, like, the indie rock stuff that we were doing too. I'd, like, call the guys at L'Oblique Records, and we'd call the guys at Rock on Stock for metal, and we'd call the guys for, all the different record stores to say, hey, is this actually moving units? Is this, like, do you think it would work if we brought it to town? And that was really, that was how you found about stuff. You found out about stuff from, bands coming to town and telling you about bands from their cities. It was really, really, really organic. And it led to, some relationships that we've had for 25 years and stuff. So it's really cool. And to come from that to the point where we're at now, where, everything is accessible. And, I think of some crazy band that I hadn't thought of, Padgett Williams, who's one of our partners on 77. And I started the business with him, and he's constantly bringing up, he's like, remember, say a band's name, and I'm like so vaguely, like some obscure, straight edge band from Seattle, and I'm like, and then I'd look it up, and you'll actually find music, right? You'll find, because there's music, everything is on the internet, and so it's fun to, like, you relive some of these bands that I hadn't thought of. And we just did an interview the other night together, and he's bringing up bands, and I'm like, how do you remember this stuff? Like, it's crazy. He's just got this catalog memory for stuff that we did when we were in our early 20s.
What would be that first big show that you had the inkling that, oh, this could be a future?
I think the first big show for us, like, we did a ton of, it was when we were doing for Front in the 80s, we were, like, literally, doing everything from the marketing to the ticketing to, humping gear to, it was everything. So you did it all. And, I remember doing a bunch of shows, like, it was crazy because we do, like, I remember doing, like, a DRI, corrosion of conformity show. And that, like, sold out. We were like, oh, this is amazing. And then the next show we did, and we sold like 7 tickets, and then we, like, lost all the money. And it was constantly a battle of
ups and downs.
Ups and downs. Like, you're making money, then you're losing money. But I think, like, we formed Greenland, which is still going to this day, in the early, like, 92, 93. We kind of started getting back into, I'd been managing a bike store, and everybody was kind of doing their thing. And like, Alice, we should take another shot at this. It'd be fun just to try to, do it for fun again. And then I think we had a great run where we had, Bad Religion played the Metropolis at the time and sold out. And we did a, Smashing Pumpkin show at the Spectrum that sold out. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, it appears like we know what we're doing. And then, of course, metal and punk were our strong, what we knew the most. So that was what we were really booking.
What would be a venue that you miss the most from back in the day?
Oh my God, there's not even a day I don't go by. I mean, whenever I go down St. Catherine Street, I just think of the Spectrum, and I think of what a tragedy that place isn't there anymore. For people that don't know it, it was like the 1,200 capacity room on St. Catherine and Brewery, and just legendary. Like, the bands that that we did there and that played there before us, obviously. And it was called Club Montreal when I was really younger. And Club Montreal was 18 and over, and one of my buddies, his older brother worked security there, so he'd sneak us in the back door for shows and stuff. And it was just like, for us to even do a show there the first time was like, I can't believe it. And I think that's definitely the venue I miss the most. And we did a ton of stuff, like, nostalgically, like, there's some craptastic, horrible venues that we used back in the day. But, we did. There was this place called the Rising Sun, which was right next to the Spectrum, and it was Dudu Boissel, who was, like, this great jazz promoter who'd been around since the 50s, and he had the Dudu's Rising Sun. And when jazz, I guess, wasn't selling as well, they agreed to let us do punk rock and metal shows there. I remember doing, like, Henry Rollins' spoken word in the upstairs part with, like, 50 kids sitting on the floor.
Unbelievable.
And a rat ran by. And I was like, this isn't happening. And so the Rising Sun I missed just because it was just a hilarious place. And good on the subject of drinking, it was one of those places that would have, like, a menu of drinks. And for us, it was like we were used to hang
classy.
out. We were used to hang out in taverns and pubs and, beer. And that was it. And this place had, like, it all ended, and this is so hilarious because it ended, the last thing on the menu was called Thunder of the Gods. And, we would literally try to drink the menu, and no one ever, like, we get to Thunder of the Gods, and Thunder of the Gods, I don't even remember what was in it, but it was like 5 kinds of alcohol in a bucket,
whatever was left.
And it was like, and I remember my friend Monk, who's still working in the industry, and he was, like, toured around the world. He was a guitar tech, and Monk came home one night when we all shared an apartment, and he's like, I drank Thunder of the Gods. And we're like, and everyone's like, no way. And there's no way you drank the whole menu and Thunder of the Gods. And then he proceeded to get very sick. But it was, so you had this whole mythology of this place that was kind of a legendary jazz haunt. And then all of a sudden we're doing, all kinds of crazy punk rock stuff there. And it was fun. And back in the day, like you really did shows wherever anybody would let you. And we did, I remember doing, Suicidal Tendencies in I think it was the Barry Church or Laurier Church.
Really?
In a basement, and had 120 people show up.
That's insane.
It was, it was that kind of spirit of DIY thing that you would really do. You do anything to put on a show and trying to find a space, and then as soon as someone found a space, somebody else would book a show there and screw it up, and not do a good job. So you're constantly going from place to place. There was like a Recreotech or Roulis Roulants on Brewery that we did the Dead Kennedys at one point, and then Fufun kind of came back into being for us. It was like the big go-to venue in the early 90s. Like it was the place that would actually that people wanted to go to. So for a long time there was no, there wasn't that many venues, and the Montreal scene has gone through periods where, there's this place on Saint Laurent called Woodstock that we did a bunch of stuff at, and it's long gone, but it's, all these places that were Purple Haze that the people, we were trying to desperately to find a place. There's a place on Mayor Street called Back Street. Oh my God, we did some shows there, and it was, it was like there was very much the punk rock scene and the metal scene back then. There was a scene, and metal was bigger, punk was much smaller. So then when the crossover bands really started to happen, like the DRIs and acts like that really for us were like, wow, this is just like speeded up punk rock, and, and it all
aggro punk rock.
Yeah, exactly. It all started to make sense, and then we moved into like a much more metal direction, doing a lot of the death metal stuff in the beginning. We did a ton of that until Steph came along, and then
shout out to Steph.
Shout out to Steph, because he kicked our asses when it came to booking the death metal, the dark stuff. Like he was just so into it.
A resident at the Medley.
Exactly. And he was, we were like, who is this kid? Like, who's this guy bidding on the shows that we've always done? And he's just so passionate about it that eventually we're just like, we can't, we're not into it as much as he was. And like, when you're in a genre of music that intensely and you do a good job, so we still picked up the shows that we, that we had relationships with agents and stuff, and we still doing a lot of those bands to this day. But he literally was he took that scene and took it into a different direction. We were selling out Spectrum shows and MTELUS, but when he started doing like his run at the Medley, it was when you really saw. And then I guess after that would be Dave Boucher came along.
That's right. Shout out to Dave.
Yeah, shout out to Dave. Extensive, and Dave kind of did the same thing. And what I learned as a promoter really early on, I remember going to South by Southwest in the early 90s, and this, even at the time, like Seth Hurwitz, who was from the 930 Club, he got up on, he did this, he was speaking at a panel, and some kid gets up and he's like, I can't get shows, no one will sell me any shows. And he's literally like, this is what you gotta do, you gotta find your niche.
Absolutely.
And then do it.
Which is what Steph did.
Exactly. You find your niche, and either you can grow from that niche, or you just have that niche and you live in that niche forever.
You become that guy.
You become that guy, and there's nothing wrong with it. And, we took the niche that we had and expanded it into booking every single kind of music possible and doing all kinds of different festivals and different styles of music. But, that scene at the time, there was guys like Steph all over the place, and we were the guys like Steph before Steph, and we became, we took that niche and turned it into something else. And it was really, it was a hilarious time to be in the scene and just, watching this whole thing grow and happen. It was a lot of fun.
Let's talk about beer.
Let's talk about beer.
Vox&Hops is a lot about beer. I really like craft beer, which is why I have a podcast about craft beer and metal.
Like it's a good fit.
Before us, we have the craft beers, which will be available at this year's Heavy Montreal. This year, we got some Trou du Diable, which is back. That was there last year. We have the Griffintown, the IPA La Mer from Brasseur de Montréal, and the double IPA, which I've actually never seen before in a can, so I'm excited to try that one. I will let you choose the one that we will drink during the rest of the interview.
I think I'm going to go with... let's go with La Pitoune.
Excellent. La Pitoune is from Le Trou du Diable, which is, and La Pitoune is a nice, soft, easy drink. I'm going to open it up.
It's a great beer, and it's a great brewery, and it's a great story. And he does, the owner, is very into punk rock as well. Mm-hmm. And he does little shows at the brewery in Shawinigan. And
cheers. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's a very nice, drinkable beer. Smooth. It's got a soft hay color. Nice, very clear white head. I was very happy last year when I found the craft beer garden in the You'll Eat section. I was there with my guitarist, Christian Donaldson from Cryptopsy, and we honestly did not go very far from that little kiosk.
A lot of people stayed there. That area was really cool, actually.
It was very cool. Yeah. Great food and very good beer.
Yeah.
You were saying a story before we started recording.
Oh, yeah. So I was in line. I saw that lineup, and, the craft beer thing was super popular at Heavy, and I walked in, and I'm like, I want to get a beer, and there's a huge lineup. And I was like, oh man, we got to get more points of sale. We got to, they got to speed up this process because people aren't going to wait, 20, 30 people deep for the entire day. So I took a picture of the lineup, and then this guy comes up to me and he's like, who do you work for, Evenco or Molson? And I'm like, how do you know? I'm taking a picture of the lineup. He's like, because I work for Trou du Diable, and he's like, the only person that would take a picture of a lineup is either the promoter or the beer company. So I thought that was really funny. And then we started talking, and got this whole story about how it all started and how excited he was to be part of big events like this, and it's super cool. And I think Molson, they've the good thing about working with a giant brewery like that is that they have so many craft beers now. Like they are literally, if you go on their website, I can't even count how many craft beers they have. So they have this great expansive reach into the craft beer world where they can, curate it and bring, different styles and different kinds of beers and, try to have something for everybody. And it's also black label at
Heavy.
At Heavy, which is funny because it was like back in the day there was like 50 was the skinhead beer. And
really,
it was weird. It was a weird
yeah.
thing in our neighborhood, anyways. And Black label was really like the cool hipster.
Really, that's so funny.
It was
like the Pabst of
the Pabst of the day, and it was literally like it was what everybody who was super cool.
That's so
drinking.
funny.
So it's funny that they came back with Black Label, which I hadn't seen. Was a big beer when I was growing up, but it never and made a resurgence. And I remember that it had a popularity at like Pitoune and stuff. Like there's definitely the drinkers of Black Label were united.
How important was it for you to have craft beer as an option at your festivals?
Oh my God, it's so important, and because for so long we didn't have it, and like we'd been working with the bigger breweries for we're a big company, and that's just kind of the way we've always gone. And there's so when we sat down with the Molson guys and we're like, wow, we're trying to put this whole food area together, and they were like super stoked. They're like, that's great. We can we'll get some of the craft beers in there, and we'll have the good food, we'll have the craft beers in the good food area, and then it's going to be we figured it'd be a draw for people that want to have something a little bit different, and it worked out super well last year. Like people were really, really excited about having the opportunity to, and it's in a nice area too. Last year it
was really nice in the little treed area, forest area.
So you're
almost
trying to like create a vibe that it's like, okay, you're out there moshing, you're doing whatever you got to do. You're in the hot sun. You want to chill for a little bit. You come over and there's a nice place to chill out and have a more relaxing type of beer than a beer that you're just going to chug. So
yes,
so it was really fun, and it was fun to work with them, and like bringing the Trou du Diable people and bringing in Creemore and stuff like that was a huge hit.
Have you guys ever considered brewing or doing like a collaboration beer for your festivals?
Thought about it, but it's pretty recent. Like I would love to do that. Like that would just be an amazing.
I think it'd be
a heavy beer would be so.
It doesn't
so
even
cool.
just have to be the heavy beer. It could just be your festival beer.
Yeah,
for all the fests.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Through this, because I'm sure you have
because then you'd
sponsors.
have the volume too to actually make it more worthwhile.
If I would suggest a style for this summer, only because I know what the trends are, I would say a Session New England IPA, but that would be only for this summer. It doesn't matter because I don't know if it'd still be a hit next year. It'd be right on
I don't think
right
we'll get
now.
it done for this year, but you let me know what's hot next year, and then
I will.
And then we'll.
I'd love to be a part of that.
Yeah, no, it's great. I was just in New England for a festival. Actually, it was a little more. It was a country. I mean, it wasn't a country festival. It's a band Wilco. So
yes, of course,
my family.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
And drank a lot of craft beers there.
Yes. So let's talk about some of that. What beers did you drink? What kind of beers do you drink when you go out to drink a craft beer?
Generally something like this world of it's. I'm not especially like when you're in a hot, sunny day, like drinking something super heavy, not really my thing. So I generally look for more of a, something lighter, something that isn't going to be, I like a Guinness. I like a darker beer too, but it's not something that I'm generally going to drink. Look for at a festival. I want to generally get something that I can drink 2 or 3 of, or and feel not like I'm going to fall asleep. So it's a challenge. And sometimes like New England is the land of IPAs, and like a lot of like really stronger.
Yeah, they've changed the game in IPAs right now.
Yeah, so it's a different world. So finding something that I'll experiment. I really like to try, especially when you're for some reason in the States, Americans have so many choices and
the
state
volume
to state, right? And like
craft breweries is insane.
Vermont, Mad Hat or whatever.
Hill Farmstead.
Exactly. There's so
Alchemist,
many. So you're like sitting there, you're in the stores, and you're like going, what do I get? And then
that's where you speak to the local clerk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then also I spent a couple of weeks in Cape Cod after the festivals are over, and they have a ton of different craft brewers. So it's like you're trying to figure out what to get. And like my brother-in-law is also a chef. He'll like, I'll come in and there'll be like 9 different kinds of beers and all kinds of different stuff. And I've got to be honest, the IPA trend is I'm sort of over it. I hate to say it.
What part of the IPAs is it do you not enjoy?
I think it's just like, I think as I age, I'm looking for an easier drinking beer. And I think the IPAs, I'll enjoy one, but it's not something that I find after one beer that I'm really enjoying as much. So I'll probably go lagers more than especially in the summer. Winter it's a bit more of a crapshoot.
It's a stout game.
It's a stout game in the winter.
What would be your favorite local craft brewery?
I mean, honestly, right now I'd say these guys from Shawinigan. It's like Trou du Diable is really the only. And I like Creemore a lot too, and I like Bose. Bose is a total,
They make weird beers.
They make weird beers.
I enjoy them, but they're always a little bit out there and strange and with some weird root in it.
Yeah, no, but they've got some more traditional stuff too that I really like. I think, I definitely think those would be the 3 that I would gravitate towards the most right now. And I'm since meeting Isaac and the Trou du Diable people, like it was. When you know somebody who makes beer, all of a sudden it brings you closer and you want to try what they're doing. So it's like I want to see what they were. They got so many weird beers too that you want to try them and see. The Apocalypse is
the Four Surfers of the Apocalypse.
Four Surfers is and Griffintown also is I'm close to Griffin. We're all like we're right near Griffintown right now, so it's always
it's a sense of home.
Yeah, and I like I like supporting the local breweries, and I don't drink as much beer as I used to, but I still like to partake now and again.
How excited are you to get back to the new site? The old site, the new revamped site of Heavy Montreal.
It's funny because we've been trying to figure out what to call it. It's like I keep going the new site, the new old site, the newly renovated old site is what I've kind of fallen. It's as the most descriptive term. I'm super excited. We loved, especially for Heavy, the setup that we had the last couple of years was super cool. But the familiarity of the old site, the ease of it's right next to the subway.
Yes.
It's the layouts were, we've been there for 10 years, more than 10 years. So going back to our roots is a lot of fun. It's going to be different this year because we literally, we're using the site that we use for Osheaga for all our festivals on the main field. So the biggest challenge for the production guys and the team is to get, to take, there's 40, 50,000 people for Osheaga, but there's going to be 20 for Heavy.
To make it
and maybe
feel.
10 for 77. So it's like, how do you make it feel intimate? How do you make it feel cool? How do you make it feel like you're not, 20,000 people on a site for 60, right? So that's really the big challenge. Fortunately, the site is, we've been out there. I'm going out there tomorrow. We got some stages going up and stuff, and I want to just get another firsthand visit. But it's really, it's beautiful, the city skyline, instead of being rocks and gravel and crap like it was before, it's now, it's this kind of like hard-packed tennis court kind of sandy vibe to it.
I'm excited.
And it's got some roads through it so that you can drive trucks and not destroy everything. So I think the city's done a phenomenal job we're very excited, and I think it's honestly, people don't realize it, but it's one of the nicest sites in North America for festivals, I believe. Like, it's, you're in the middle, you're 10 minutes from downtown by subway, in the middle of the St. Lawrence River. It's spectacular. And the city, the tree line now, it's like you're looking at the stage, and then you see the city, and nighttime and the St. Lawrence rushing by. It's fantastic. The bands that show up too, they're just blown away, because what we've always tried to do is do a very European style festival where, to us, taking care of the artists is super important. Like, taking care of the fans and taking care of the artists. We knew that if we built festivals where we were really focused on the fan and band experience, that the fans would want to come back and the bands would want to come back, and
the bands would talk to other bands about it too.
And it's word of mouth, and it costs more money to do it the way we do it, but we really believe in, like, the final, the outcome is that you have a Yulee garden where people can go do something that they wouldn't necessarily normally do at most metal festivals, and looking at wanting to be a very, treating your crowd with respect and amazing sound and lights. And we're lucky because the whole setup is there for 3 weeks, so we're able to build. It's
also very smart.
Yeah, we're able to build a small city that we can transform into different styles of music, and it allows us to have the best production, I think, for any festival.
Right beside the city.
Yeah, and you're like, the sound, the lights, the staging. It's all like, you don't get better sound and lights and staging than what we were able to offer. So the artists show up, and I remember with the new 750, like the big. Shout out to Montreal Company Stage Line, who built one of the most impressive stages I've ever, in the history of the world. And they, I've seen bands walk onto that stage for the first time, and they're just like, holy shit, this is amazing. And to be able to offer that experience and that level of production and quality is really important to us.
I've played them all. I've played Whacken. I've played Hellfest. I played With Full Force. I played Brutal Assault. I played Summer Breeze, and you guys are right up there, if not better than them, honestly.
Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure.
Because those are literally, Hellfest and Walk-In is that's the gold standard in the industry. And I think in North America, it kind of comes from the Warped Tour vibe, and it's more of a grungier.
You think it's gonna be makeshift?
Yeah, and it's like, Danny Wimmer's doing a spectacular job in the States with all his festivals, and but it's generally because they're not there for 3 weekends. They can't afford to do some of the things that we try to do, and constantly trying to reinvent the festival experience and trying to change. We never want it to be stagnant. We never want people to show up and say, "Oh, it's just the same old heavy." We've changed stage positions. Practically every year since we started, changed sizes, changed locations of things, just because it makes it interesting, and it makes
fresh.
People want to, keep coming back, going, "Well, what are they going to do this year?" And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's not as well received, and then we adjust for the next year. So it's having an amazing production team that is able to look at those sorts of things and go, that didn't quite work. Let's tweak it for next year, or let's try to, figure out another way to make that work. And having super passionate people that love music and love what they do is really, this kind of stuff doesn't happen without having that kind of team behind it.
Let's talk about this year's festival. What sets are you looking most forward to?
Oh my goodness. Obviously Slayer, because last time they're going to play in Quebec, and I can't even count how many times I've seen Slayer. But Slayer never disappoints, and I can only imagine how excited they're going to be playing, their last show in Quebec outside. So it's going to be epic, and I'm an old school kind of guy, so I love Hatebreed, Clutch, Anthrax. It's kind of, Steel Panther's a blast. I don't know if you've ever seen
I have seen them. Yeah.
We try to not take it entirely too seriously.
But you absolutely shouldn't with that.
Yeah,
no.
Exactly. So it's like we're trying to, last year we had Ailstorm and stuff, and it's like
yes,
and
good party band.
It's great, and
Galactic Empire,
yeah. And if you want to do stuff, if you're going to be out in the field for 11 hours, you need to mix it up a bit. And I think we've run afoul of the metal purists over the years because. We wanted to be more European, and I love the stuff. It's like we put Evanescence on this year, and we were, some people were grumbling about it, some people are super excited about it.
But then they got Summer Slaughter, so
yeah. So it's like you're looking at that going, the purists are never going to be happy because they want to see everything that is exactly the style of music that they want to see.
But that's not a festival.
And that's not a festival. And that means that we can do it for we'll do it one more time. And the 3,000 or 4,000 people that want to go are going to go. But if you want to continue to do it the way we're doing it, you have to have an open tent. You have to be able to, have some hardcore stuff in there and have some, the whole advent of, having clutch on there and having stoner stuff that's, it's super important.
It's an umbrella. Metal's a big umbrella.
Yeah, and you've got to
covers
have,
a lot of things.
You've got to have your, for the longest time as like active rock or whatever, people in Quebec were like, we can't have that. And we kind of let ourselves be influenced by, I think that's the danger with social media is that you can let yourself be completely think that you second guess yourself. The first year we had Iron Maiden and we had Motley Crue. And the Motley Crue day didn't do as well.
Really?
And the Iron Maiden day was huge. And from that point on, we're like, oh man, maybe they're not into the, the glammy kind of more 80s, 90s, I guess, not 80s. Was that the 80s or 90s? Yeah,
Motley Crue, we like the 80s into the 90s.
Yeah. So, and it was like, and I'm like, well, that's weird that this doesn't work in Quebec. It should totally work. But we just didn't reach those people. And then we started doubting ourselves. And then from that point on, it's been like 10 years of like, okay. And then I think the last few years, we were just like, you know what? We're going to program the festival that we want. We're going to listen to the fans. And we're going to try to give a little bit of everything, make it so that there's enough on there that you want to see. If you're really specific about your genre. And if there's something that we find polarizing, we're going to put something super heavy against it. Mm-hmm. So like the way we program it stage-wise, Jean-François Michaud is a genius. Like he puts all of this together.
Shout out to JF. Vox&Hops alumni.
Let's drink to JF. And he totally deserves like the credit for so much of what's happened with Heavy over the last few years. And Peter DeHaze, marketing genius, man behind our tremendously successful wrestling portion of the event. So Peter's been pushing that forever.
Green Phantom.
And like Heavy Mania. And, that's what I think a festival should be about. Because you should have, when we first started doing it, once again, it's like people are like, what the fuck is this? Is wrestling? Has no
There's
place.
Nothing more close to metal than wrestling.
Yeah,
no
exactly.
Way. Yeah.
And like
beer, wrestling, metal.
Beer, wrestling, metal, black clothing. There's a few staples there that are incontournables, comme on dirait
yes,
en
of course.
français. And I think, having all of that together in one place. And this year we have like a giant fountain to keep people cool. Like we want it to be fun. We wanted people to bring their kids. We want it to be, I think the first year when I saw, I'm like, this has got to work because it was like a bunch of kids wearing, what shirt was it? It was like one of those 80s glam bands. It was like a bunch of like super hardcore metal kids they all had the same shirt. I forget what band it was that year.
Rat.
It was something like that. It was like something, and they were all like getting into
That's
it.
your
Like,
future.
This is cool.
Yeah.
And then seeing like this granddad with his son and their kid. And it was like 3 generations of metal.
That's what festivals are supposed to be.
And then 3 generations of metal, and it's like 3 generations of punk rock on 77. And it's such a nice vibe. 77 especially was a super shock for me because when I think back to punk rock, my early days, the kids were kids. We were all young. Everybody that went to shows was in their 18, 19, 20. Nobody else really, and there was a slightly older crowd that may have been pushing 30. And then to see like little kids coming to a punk rock or a metal festival with their dads and moms, and everybody's just, it's like a celebration of a style of music that everyone's like, oh, it's never going to last, and it's never going to be around, and no one's ever going to be able to put on a festival that people are going to go to. And it legitimized the whole thing for me. It's like I love to see the camaraderie, like you've been, like people are smiling, and people are from all over the country and all over the world, and they're just like, we're all in this together. This is fun. And that's where I think, along the way, we kind of lost our way a few times and came back and tried a few things. And like we had punk rock one year and like took so much abuse for that. I'm like, well, why would we do that? If the metal kids really don't want to hear punk rock,
just make a separate day.
Make a separate day. And that's worked out super great for us so far. And I remember it's like Marky Ramone's on stage and like just watching people walk by the stage without even looking up. And I was like,
this is a legend.
I think this is a legend. This is like, it was Andrew WK singing. And I'm like, this is fucking cool. And like there's a group of people in front of the stage, but there's thousands of people there and thousands of people just ignoring it. And I was like, okay, at that moment I was like, this is never going to work. Like if you got them, they're playing Ramones songs, Andrew WK singing, this isn't the same crowd. So, but then there are people that cross over because I love both. And there's a lot of people. And I remember talking to Disturbed's agent who was in town. He's like, he grew up in New York. He's like, dude, we fucking hated punk. Like we hated punk rock. We hated, we were long hairs. They hated us. We had, they were short. They had skinheads and stuff. And I was like, really? You didn't like punk rock at all? He's like, no, couldn't stand it. So that polarizing era, I mean, I think the crossover bands, and all of the thrash stuff that came out after it was limited to maybe not the entire world. And I always thought Montreal was different. I thought Quebec was different. I'm like, the kids that go to these shows, obviously there's got to be more crossover than that. But now that we do the Weekend Warrior Pass where you can buy like the Friday for 77 and Heavy on the other 2 days, we still see, good sales. Like people want to do all three. So there is definitely a crowd out there if we're doing all three, which is awesome. So I know that there are people like me out there that like both. The crossover and love punk rock. And, it's fun to see, and it's fun to be able to put all of that together and to see the people that go to both. And it's just a blast. I mean, I love it. I love doing it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sitting down with me, drinking a nice beer. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
To Heavy Montreal. Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. What a cool dude. I could have just kept going on forever and ever, but I know that Nick is super busy with the festival coming up, and he had to go. It was really cool. It was in this amazing secret bar for VIP events in the Bell Center, which is where our local hockey team plays, and all of the amazing, huge concerts happen. It was a surreal day, surreal experience, and I was floating on a cloud after this episode, so I'm super stoked it happened. Coming up next week, I'm going to have my first of a whole bunch of interviews from Heavy Montreal. I am planning on dropping 2 episodes a week because my interviews will be much shorter due to the structure and time frame of the way that the interviews are conducted on site at this year's Heavy Montreal. So I'm super stoked to share them all with you. I'm excited. I can't wait. I hope to see a bunch of you at Heavy Montreal. If you know me, come say hi, come drink a beer with me. Let's hang out. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope that you have a hangout with your friends, your loved ones, and most importantly, I hope remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beers. Cheers, Vox and Hopsheads.